Story recapped here. Today, I'm going to explain a horror, mystery, and sci-fi film called Black Box. Spoilers ahead. Watch out and take care. Nolan Wright. A photographer struggles to remember anything about his life after a fatal car accident that caused severe damage to his brain. Unfortunately, the accident had also claimed the life of his wife, Rachel. As a result, his young daughter, Ava, has to work hard to remind him of things he used to do and the people he once knew. To recover his memories, he watches a video of himself when he first held Ava. He then flips through a photo album and sees pictures of his family, but nothing comes back to him. Feeling discouraged, he tosses the album away and gives up. He tries to get up from the couch, but suddenly, a mysterious figure holds him down and chokes him. As he struggles to break free, Ava calls out to him and wakes him up. Ava tells him they have to leave the house soon if he wants to show up on time to his appointment. As he cleans up, Ava shows him a picture of a woman to check if he remembers her name. When he says Karen, Ava corrects her and tells him that it's Kathy. Nolan recalls that Kathy has been her boss for 12 years, and he was the lead photographer in their office. As he grabs his phone from the desk, Nolan hears a voice message from the office of Dr. Brooks, asking him if he wants to participate in a cognitive research study. He ignores the call and heads out the door with Ava. When they arrive at Ava's school, she asks him to try their secret handshake. When he makes a mistake, Ava assures him that he'll remember it again. Nolan soon meets with Kathy at the office of the Southern Texas Chronicle to find out if he can get his job back. However, when Nolan starts showing her work samples, Kathy interrupts him and says that the publisher refuses to hire him. Furthermore, she points out that his new photos do not have the same quality as his past work. Nolan heads back to the car in dismay and goes to the hospital to see his friend Dr. Gary Yaboa. Gary offers Nolan some money after hearing that his former publisher turned him down, but Nolan refuses. Gary notices Nolan's bandaged hand and asks him what happened. Nolan says that he punched a wall in frustration. Gary hints that it's not like Nolan to do that at all, noting that he's never seen him lose his temper before. Nolan's phone rings, and he sees that it's a call from another doctor. Gary tells him to consider Dr. Brooks's offer, noting that she's one of the leading researchers in her field even though her studies sound a bit risky. They both go to Dr. Brooks's office, but Gary leaves Nolan behind to do his rounds. Inside the office, Dr. Brooks goes over the details about Nolan's accident and notes that he has recovered quite well. However, the doctor informs him that the pathways to his memory have not been totally corrupted and suggests that he try undergoing hypnosis to recover them. Nolan agrees, so Dr. Brooks immediately prepares him for the session. After falling into a trance, Nolan soon finds himself in the dark, hearing only the ticking of a watch and a strange cracking sound. In just a few moments, a hand suddenly grabs Nolan's shoulder, causing him to jump up from the sofa. As the doctor tries to calm him down, Nolan tells her that he had similar experiences in his nightmares. Dr. Brooks explains that hypnosis allows him to access his subconscious, but patients don't usually see anything until after a few sessions. She assures Nolan that his memories are still hidden in his mind, and she can recover them with her therapies. Nolan leaves her office, saying he'll think about it. Ava waits for Nolan at the school, but her father had forgotten to pick her up, so a school official takes her home. When she arrives, she ignores her father and goes straight to her room. The school official warns Nolan that she will have to contact child services if he forgets to pick up Ava again. Back at the hospital, Dr. Brooks explains that she wants to try using a device she calls the black box, which will allow him to experience his memories as if he is dreaming. Before the start of the session, Dr. Brooks tells Nolan that he needs to imagine himself in a safe room that only he can enter. Then, he undergoes hypnosis with the new device and soon finds himself in a bedroom. The doctor assures Nolan that nothing can harm him in his safe room as long as he stays there, but she warns him not to open the door because she won't bring him back once he leaves. She then instructs Nolan to imagine an analog watch, which he can use to access key memories in his mind. Pushing the crown will take him to one of his memories. Turning the knob forward will allow him to go to the next one, while turning it backward will let him go back. Pushing the crown and will take him back to his safe room. Upon pushing the crown, he is taken back to his wedding day. He watches as the bride approaches him, but her face is blurred when he lifts the veil. He looks around to find that the faces of other people are blurred too. In the back, he notices a man with contorted limbs approaching him. When the man reaches him, he wakes up from the session. When he tells Dr. Brooks about the contorted person, she says that it could be his brain trying to keep him from remembering to protect him from the trauma. At home, Nolan looks at the pictures of Rachel on his phone and sees an image of his wedding, which was held outdoors, not inside a church. He puts his phone down and notices a chopstick on the floor. As Nolan twirls it around in his hand, he remembers eating sushi. The next day, he takes Ava to a sushi bar and tells her that he once brought her there when she was 3. Later on, he goes to Dr. Brooks's lab for another session and tells her that she took Ava to a sushi bar called Nisa. The doctor says that she's envious because she loves that restaurant too. As they prepare for another session, Nolan asks whether he would recover naturally if they stop the therapy. She tells Nolan that he's suffering from a condition called prosopagnosia, which causes the blurring of the faces. Dr. Brooks tells him to try longer sessions until they get to a point when he would see the faces clearly. She advises him to say, "I run my mind, it doesn't run me," when he encounters the contorted man. When Nolan gets to the safe room, he pushes the crown and finds himself in a bedroom holding a broken hanger. He hears an infant crying on the baby monitor, so he goes into the next room to console her. Nolan looks at the baby and sees that her face is blurred. When he looks outside, he notices that he's not in his house. He then hears a lady sobbing in another room and follows her voice until he reaches the room. When the woman turns to him, her face is blurred as well. Nolan notices that she has bruises on her arm, suggesting that she had been beaten. He suddenly hears cracking sounds and sees the contorted man climbing out of the baby's crib. He starts repeating the sentence that Dr. Brooks told him. Despite this, the man continues to crawl toward him until he grabs Nolan by the neck. When Nolan wakes up, he tells the doctor that the contorted man had choked him. Dr. Brooks surmises that Nolan must be getting closer to recovering his memories because his mind is trying hard to keep him from remembering. Nolan noted that he was in an apartment that seemed familiar to him, and yet, he and Rachel had always lived in their current home since they got married. Nolan visits Gary and asks him if he ever got into a physical fight with Rachel. Gary assures him that he never hurt his wife because he would hear about it from Rachel if something serious had happened. When Nolan mentions the apartment, Gary says it could be a hallucination, and his mind may have mixed up a few things due to his stressful situation. While waiting for Ava at school, he starts looking up the apartment he saw in his memory and decides to find the building. While driving around, he starts recognizing the area and parks the car. He leaves Ava behind, but she calls out to him when the car door locks, so he takes her with him. Inside the building, he sees the dents on the stairs and recalls a man tumbling down. On the second floor, he comes across a door that seems familiar to him. He knocks on the door, and a little girl opens it. He asks to see the girl's mother, but he decides to go inside and take a peek before the child could call her. When he enters the living room, he sees the mother getting up from the sofa. Nolan apologizes and walks out of the apartment. Nolan revisits Gary and gives him the address of the apartment so he could investigate. Gary writes the address down on his hand. Nolan suspects that he had an affair, but Gary assures him that he wouldn't do such a thing. Nolan goes back for another session with Dr. Brooks. Once inside the black box, he gets back to the wedding, where the contorted man appears again. Nolan tries ignoring the man, but he keeps getting closer until he finally reaches Nolan and hits his face. Instead of waking up, he goes back to the safe room and turns the crown. He turns up at the apartment and goes straight to the room where he saw the crying woman. When the contorted man shows up, Nolan knocks him down by kicking him. Nolan turns the crown on the watch again and ends up in a hospital bed with extensive injuries. He sees a woman watching over him, but her face is blurred. Nolan looks at the woman again, and this time, her face becomes clear. When he turns the crown on the watch to go back to the apartment, he discovers that the crying woman was the same lady watching him at the hospital. Nolan turns the crown to go back to the wedding and sees the same woman when he lifts the veil. He then remembers that she is also the mother of the child in the apartment. When he gets back to the safe room, he realizes that he has the memories of another man. When he looks out the window, he sees a different face in the reflection. He realizes that he's not Nolan and starts recalling the day he proposed to his wife and the time he brought their daughter to a sushi bar. Sitting next to him at the restaurant was Dr. Brooks, whom he recognizes as his mother. Dr. Brooks hears him calling her mom and realizes that her son Thomas has finally recovered his memories. She explains that Thomas had slipped down the stairs and was taken to the hospital, but it was already too late when they got there. So Dr. Brooks downloaded all of Thomas' data from the hospital's servers and waited until she could upload his consciousness to another patient. She tells Thomas that he's been gone for 2 years. She recounted that when she transferred her consciousness into Nolan's brain, she knew that her black box had worked when he grabbed her hand. However, his memory was not fully intact, and his brain was still adjusting, so she didn't force him to remember. After Thomas failed to recover his memory on his own, she decided to invite him back to her lab and use the black box. The doctor then shows him a picture of his daughter, Ashley. and tells him that he now has another chance to do things right. He gets out of the hospital and fetches Ava from the school. He tells Ava that he wants to drop her off at Gary's place for a few days because it's not safe to be with him. Ava starts worrying about how he'll get through a day without her, but when she raises her concerns, he gets annoyed and snaps at her. When they arrive at Gary's house, Ava grabs his hand and writes something on his palm. Gary offers to let him stay at his place, but Thomas insists on going back home on his own. So Thomas drives away with tears flowing from his eyes. When he gets to the corner of the street, he looks at his palms to see Ava's message, which reads, "Don't forget about me." Thomas goes to the apartment to see Miranda, but she only recognizes him as the stranger who walked into her living room uninvited the other day. She threatens to call the police, so Thomas tells her that he went to school with her husband, but they fell apart. Miranda hears Ashley ask about dinner, so she tells Thomas that she has to prepare her something to eat. Thomas asks for another moment with her, so she hesitantly invites him inside their apartment. Once inside, Thomas asks her if she remembers Dr. Brooks's studies about restoring someone's consciousness using their brainwaves. He tells Miranda that the experiments worked and reveals that he's Thomas, her husband. She frowns in disbelief and asks Thomas to leave. Thomas starts telling her about details that only he would know. For example, he points out that he decided to keep the wallpaper in the apartment even though she hates it because he wants it to remind him that he wants to move out someday. Thomas explains that the man who used to be living in his new body was already brain dead. He says he intends to use the opportunity to make things right again and promises not to hurt her again. However, his attitude soon changes when he notices that Miranda has removed all his pictures in the apartment. Thomas grows furious, wondering why Miranda has removed any trace of him in her life. Miranda asks him to leave, but he gets mad and tries to go to Ashley's bedroom. Miranda tries to stop him, prompting him to shove her against the wall. He goes ahead and enters the bedroom, where he sees Ashley doing her homework. Ashley, who's wearing headphones, is oblivious to what's happening outside her room. As Thomas watches his daughter, Miranda approaches him from behind and hits him in the head. Thomas wakes up to find himself in front of Ava just outside Gary's house, bleeding from the blow to his head. He runs to his car and sees the contorted man in the reflection on the window. Thomas drives away and visits his mom to ask her how he ended up outside Gary's house with no recollection of what happened. Dr. Brooks suggests that his mind took him to a place where he felt safe in an attempt to protect him. Meanwhile, Gary sees the address of Miranda's apartment in his hand and starts looking it up on the internet. He learns from a news article that Thomas had died there 2 years ago and figures out that he was related to Dr. Brooks. Dr. Brooks prepares Thomas for another session inside the black box, telling him that he'll get better when he gets rid of the contorted man. She advises him to treat the man like a virus that he has to kill. Inside the black box, Thomas is taken back to their apartment. As he looks at the pictures on the wall, he hears a banging on the door. After unlocking the door, the contorted man enters and stands up slowly to straighten himself up. When the contorted man turns around, Thomas discovers that he is Nolan. Thomas lets Dr. Brooks know about what he found out, but she tells him that the manifestation is just his mind trying to hold him back. Thomas starts beating Nolan up, but he wouldn't fight back. He then grabs a knife and tells his mother to begin the countdown to take him out of the black box. As he gets ready to stab Nolan, he hears Ava's voice asking for her dad. Ava arrives in the lab with Gary and tries to wake up her father. Despite his weakened condition, Nolan tries to respond, whispering that he's there for Ava. Thomas becomes convinced that Nolan is still alive, but his mom insists that it's not him. He tries to stab Nolan again, but this time, he hears Ashley's voice asking him to stop. He recalls that Ashley was begging him to stop while he was beating up Miranda. Ashley tries to help her mom by pushing Thomas away, but he kicks her forcibly. Miranda shoves Thomas to protect Ashley, causing him to fall down the stairs. Thomas starts feeling remorseful and lets go of Nolan. He looks at his pictures on the wall and heads to the door to leave the safe room. As the alarm on the EEG monitor sounds off, Dr. Brooks starts the countdown and removes the black box from the patient's head. She holds his hand, thinking that he's Thomas, but as he wakes up, he calls Ava over and does their secret handshake. In the black box, Thomas sits alone in the dark, feeling regretful about what he's done to his wife and daughter. Dr. Brooks tries to put Nolan back in the black box again, but Gary stops her and reminds her of the oath she took as a physician. Then, as he leaves the lab, Gary sees the black box and dismantles it. Nolan gets back home feeling sorrowful over the time he lost when he was trapped in his mind. When Ava comes over to his room, Nolan tries to make up for the lost time and tells her to grab a book so he can read to her. After being dismissed from her position, Dr. Brooks sits in front of the computer at home and tries to activate the black box again. She writes a few lines of code, then loads Thomas' brainwave file from a backup folder on her hard drive. She peeks into the box, then calls out to Thomas and smiles. Subscribe to watch more videos like this. Turn on notifications. And leave a like, it really helps the channel out. Thank you for watching.